Hello everyone, this is Adam Kruger and this series is Lit Ideas, and today we're doing something a little bit different. The last couple of videos were in-depth dives into Jack Kerouac's Dharma Bums, and today we're going to do something a little simpler. We're doing a book review of Walter Mosley's 2016 novel, An Easy Rawlins Mystery. It is called Charcoal Joe. If you do not know who Walter Mosley is, you are certainly missing out. He's definitely one of the premier writers in noir fiction and detective fiction of the modern era. He's been writing for quite some time. He has 14 total Easy Rawlins mysteries, along with a handful of other ones. I personally have read about 4 or 5 different Walter Mosley novels, and I've been wildly entertained and impressed by all of them. I've been a fan since I was very young, middle school, maybe early high school, when I first came across Devil in a Blue Dress. That's his first and most famous one. If you've never seen it, there's an excellent movie starring Denzel Washington called Devil in a Blue Dress, based off that book. It's very much worth checking out. And every time I read one of those, it always kind of makes me sad that that series never took off, because imagining Denzel in that role for, a dozen or so films, or however many we could have got, that would have been amazing, but unfortunately it didn't work out. What are you going to do? Anyways, let's start off with some basic facts. Like I said, it's the 14th mystery in this series. If you haven't read any, I would probably recommend starting with Devil in a Blue Dress first, and then working your way up. However, if you want to jump right into Charcoal Joe, there's really no great reason not to. The only thing that might be a bit of a hindrance is there's a lot of characters in this novel that they throw at you who have been introduced in other Easy Rawlins mysteries by Walter Mosley. And if you're new to them, it might be a little hard to keep track of them. There was a few that I didn't even recognize, because like I said, I've only read about 4 or 5 of his books. So that would go under the guise of one of the possible cons to some of the readers, although I'm sure that upon multiple second, third readings, that all of those characters will begin to settle down as you begin to understand all better and be able to connect it all better. And I think that's going to greatly enhance your joy of reading any of these books, especially Charcoal Joe, because like I said, he does throw a lot at you. Now, some of the things about the setting takes place in the late 60s. I believe it's 68, if I'm not mistaken, in LA. And one of the things that distinguishes the Easy Rawlins mysteries from other noir novels or other detective novels is that Easy Rawlins is an African-American protagonist, and he's largely dealing with issues, murders, etc., mysteries within the African-American community. So along with dealing with really well-written, interesting narratives around detective fiction, you also have a layer of social consciousness dealing with racism throughout the various areas of which the Easy Rawlins mysteries are written. And this one, like I said, is late 60s, so obviously there's still a great deal for Easy Rawlins to overcome and to have to deal with beyond just the mystery itself. You see constant reminders of institutionalized and individual racism that he comes across, and that he has to maneuver his way through while dealing with this really well-written, tightly crafted, awesome detective story. I don't want to spoil too much about it, but if you've ever read any of them before, a lot of it deals with Mouse. You don't quite as much of that character as you like Raymond Alexander, because he's amazing. If there's one tiny nitpick I do have, it's that I wish we could have had more of him. But he connects easy with this gangster named Charcoal Joe, who's a complete badass. He's in jail, but he's an absolute mastermind of organized crime and whatnot, and is a really interesting, very multi-layered character. That's another great thing about much of Walter Mosley's writings, is most of the characters are very multi-dimensional. There's a lot to them. There's a lot of contradictions, a lot of beauty, a lot of just interesting, really great stuff. So he's really great at developing well-rounded characters. In terms of some of the other bonuses, like I said, you have the social justice layer, where you're dealing with racism of the time, institutionalized in the individual. The writing itself is excellent, but like some of the best mystery writers, he doesn't overdo it. It's very lean, it's very to the point, and he doesn't overburden you with too much prose, but he knows when to dash it in there appropriately, especially when it comes to things like atmosphere. The action scenes are really gripping. The sex scenes, there's quite a few. There always are in the Easy Rollins series. They are really hot and steamy. Good stuff. Um, and yeah, the prose is very clean, and it's really eloquent when he wants it to be. One tiny nitpick is occasionally the writer kind of inserts himself when he's trying to be a little bit too clever in trying to come up with some sort of analysis or overgeneralization about a particular situation or kind of person or anything like that. And I think that can kind of draw you out of the story a little bit, but that's a real nitpicky thing. Most of those kind of observations are very clever, but sometimes I feel like it's an example of the author trying to be more clever than he should be, instead of letting the story grow organically and naturally. But either way, it's all really good stuff. Another slight nitpick is in terms of the plot. I wish there was a few more zigs and zags and turning points than there are. There are plenty enough to keep you interested and engaged, and it's really fun, interesting stuff. The pieces are definitely set meticulously throughout it, so that if you're reading and paying really close attention, you can start to begin to piece things together. But as in the fashion of a lot of mysteries, like the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle ones, there's key informations that he reveals towards the very end, which kind of come is a duh moment or an aha moment, or however you want to look at that, in which you're able to kind of piece everything together. So for the most part, it's all really excellent stuff. Like I said, maybe a few minute characters that he throws at you a little too quickly, but if you're well versed in the Easy Rollins universe, it won't be anything to worry about. If you aren't, again, I would probably start off with Devil in a Blue Dress, but if you want to jump right into Charcoal Joe, I think you can really be thoroughly entertained from it without knowing anything about Easy Rollins prior to that, although it probably would help. Beyond that, what else was I going to say? Well, Easy Rollins he's also a really fantastic protagonist in a lot of ways. Okay, and as Walter Mosley himself has noted, he wants to have really heroic protagonists, especially black protagonists that people can look up to, and that can be endearing and empowering, and Easy Rollins certainly is that. If there's one critique I'd have about the Easy Rollins character within himself, is that he's a little bit too perfect. Definitely bad things happen to him. You see his love life kind of crumble in this one. You see him encounter a great deal of racism. You see him struggle to put the mystery together. But ultimately, there's nothing about him that's an inherent contradiction. There's nothing about himself that's hindering his own ability to do anything, creating kind of a more interesting dynamic within that character, and inbuilt contradictions and flaws. He's a little bit too perfect, and I can certainly see where Walter Mosley wants to have really heroic, noble black protagonists to look up to, and that's great. But I think when you're looking at other classic noir and detective stories, like when I think of the greatest detective of all time, in my personal opinion at least, that's quite easily Sherlock Holmes. And one of the reasons he's so fantastic is because he's so multi-layered, and he's so complicated, and he's so deeply flawed. Despite being a genius, he is definitely somewhat of a sociopath, as the BBC series kind of plays up in their recent installment of the 4 series they have. If you haven't seen that, that's excellent, by the way, too. He's a drug addict. He's a bit of a misogynist. He's super self-centered. He's callous as hell. And he's an absolutely great character. I mean, he's been viewed in more films than almost any other character next to Dracula. So that alone speaks volumes as to the lasting endurance, legacy and endurance of that character, Sherlock Holmes. So when you're looking at Easy Rollins and comparing him to others, he falls a little bit short there. But in fairness, when you're looking at a lot of other classic noir ones, like Sam Spade, Philip Marlowe, etc., they're very similar in the archetype that Easy Rawlins is built off of, except obviously they're white characters, so they don't have to deal with the racism that Easy Rawlins does have to go through. But still, they're more constants throughout a series, and the journey is more about the people and the atmosphere and the mystery and the action and the sex and everything that you encounter. And in that regard, I mean, Easy Rawlins is a really great character. He takes you through it all admirably. You look up to him. You're rooting for him the whole time. But maybe if there's any bit of criticism within the character himself, it's that. But there's plenty of other super interesting characters within it to kind of make up for whatever Easy Rawlins might be lacking in a more three-dimensional, contradictory, flawed sense. Obviously, you have Mouse, who is quite a sociopath, but he's endearing and amazing, and I love him. And again, if there's one of the few complaints I have about this book is that you don't get quite enough of Raymond Alexander, aka Mouse. But it's a really awesome book. I'd highly recommend checking it out. If I were to give it a grade of sorts, I suppose I'd give it about a B plus or so for what it is, because like I said, there's a few little nitpicky things about it, but overall, for what it is, for a noir mystery detective story, it's really, really good. It doesn't come a ton better for the most part, and he really knows what he's doing, this Walter Mosley guy. I'd highly recommend checking him out, either Charcoal Joe or any of his other books. If you like this video, remember to subscribe, like, do all that fun stuff. If you want to see any more of my content, you can follow me on my author page on Facebook, Adam Kruger Author, where I have blogs and short stories and information about my upcoming book. But yeah, that's it. Next time we come together, we're going to be talking about one of a few possible books. I'm reading War and Peace right now. I don't know if I'm going to do something on that, because there's a million things on that. Otherwise, as I promised before, I'm going to be looking at Colson Whitehead's Pulitzer Prize winning The Underground Railroad as part of in kind of a accompaniment to a travelogue I'm doing, which I'm examining different areas of the country and literature that reflects them. So anyways, that's about it. Have a great day.